The scream came like a blade through silk. Sharp, sudden, impossible to ignore. Nathan Ellis bolted upright in bed, heart already pounding before his feet touched the floor. It was always the same time. 3:15 a.m. Not a minute before or after. The twins, Liam and Theo, 5 years old and once full of light, now haunted like clockwork by something neither doctors nor logic could explain. He ran down the hallway, the silence of the house pressing in on him like fog. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of old wood, all of it felt louder in the absence of her. Emily, his wife, his anchor, 8 months gone, and still every part of this place whispered her name. He reached the boys' room, breath caught in his throat. Blankets on the floor, one pillow by the dresser, tiny socks scattered like evidence of a struggle. And there they were, under the small study desk, curled into each other like two trembling animals. Theo sobbed into his brother's shirt, while Liam, pale and shaking, stared wide-eyed at the window. She was there, Liam whispered. By the glass. The dark lady. Nathan dropped to his knees. He didn't ask who. He didn't question where. He'd learned by now that logic was useless in these moments. He reached out, wrapping his arms around them both. "You're safe. I'm here," he whispered, though his voice trembled too. But the truth was, Nathan didn't know if they were safe. Not from what was happening. Not from what he couldn't see. By day, the house looked like any other luxury home in Austin's quiet, expensive suburbs. Clean hedges, a sparkling pool, sunlight falling just right across the wood-paneled exterior. But after dark, it changed. Or maybe he did. Nathan had built this house with his own hands. Not literally, but close. As an architect, every inch of it bore his signature. The wide open spaces, the high ceilings, the play of light. He had imagined laughter filling the rooms, not sobs. Joy echoing down the halls, not screams. And now, every night, the same story. The same terror. He had done everything. Pediatricians, neurologists, child therapists, sleep consultants, even a nutritionist who claimed bananas before bed were magical. Nothing helped. The boys still woke up screaming. Always at 3:15. Always about the lady. Always reaching for someone who wasn't there. The first nanny quit after a week. The second lasted 3 days. The third said the house felt wrong. The fourth, bless her heart, suggested an exorcism. Nathan had laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound, and cried alone in the garage that night. But then there was Mrs. Harrove, 62 years old, retired military wife, and proud of it. Children need structure and love, not fairy tales, she declared on her first day. 2 weeks later, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ellis. I can't." Nathan didn't ask why. He understood. He lived in that house too. The breaking point came on a Wednesday. Nathan was in the middle of a critical investor meeting, suits and slides and projections, the kind of thing he used to live for. His phone buzzed. Again and again. 5 calls in 20 minutes. The school. He stepped out, forced calm in his voice. "Everything okay?" It wasn't. "They fell asleep during class," the vice principal said gently. But when the teacher touched Liam's shoulder to wake him, he screamed, said he didn't want to be taken to the dark place. Nathan didn't say a word. He just left, walked out of a multi-million-dollar meeting, got in his car and drove. The boys were asleep on the infirmary couch when he arrived. But it wasn't peaceful. Their bodies twitched. Their faces tensed like they were fighting something even in dreams. Nathan knelt beside them, his voice barely a breath. "You're okay now." When Liam opened his eyes, he didn't cry. He just looked at his father with a hollow stare that went right through him. On the drive home, silence hung like smoke. Then Theo, quiet and steady, asked the question Nathan had feared most. "Daddy, did Mommy die because she was asleep?" Nathan's hands nearly slipped from the wheel. "What?" Liam added softly. "She was sleeping. Then she never woke up. So, if we sleep, will we die too?" The car swerved slightly as Nathan pulled onto the shoulder. He turned around, his voice breaking. "No, no, boys. Mommy didn't die because she was asleep. She was sick. The doctors didn't catch it in time. But sleep doesn't take people away." "But she came in her sleep," Theo whispered. "The lady, that's when she comes." And just like that, Nathan understood. It wasn't about nightmares. They were afraid to sleep. They thought the dark lady was death. That night, Nathan stared at the ceiling until dawn. He didn't move, didn't blink, just listened, for the wind, for the click of the AC, for the smallest cry from down the hall. He had lost Emily. He couldn't lose them too. Something had to change. And so began the search. Again, he called every agency in the city. I don't care what it costs, he told his assistant. I need someone who understands trauma. Someone who gets children. 3 interviews. 1 weekend. The first came with credentials and charts. A pediatric nurse with a clipboard full of REM cycle graphs and cortisol data. They need sleep training, she said firmly. And possibly medication. The boys didn't speak once. Not even a nod. The second, a therapist with puppets and storybooks. She spoke softly, encouraging, gentle, until she said the word mom. And then both boys collapsed in sobs so loud Nathan had to carry them out. They must confront the loss, she said. They're stuck in denial. Nathan didn't respond. He just held his sons tighter. The third one was late. No degrees. No resume. No clipboard. Just a canvas bag, wild curls, and a smile so warm it seemed to dim the shadows in the room. Sorry I got lost, she said with a laugh. First time in Austin. Her name was Grace. And that's when everything began to change. She didn't bring toys. No printed schedule, no clipboard, no laminated guide to child behavior. Just a worn canvas bag, a quiet presence, and the kind of eyes that didn't ask questions. They simply listened. Grace Whitmore. 35. No formal degree. No flashy credentials. Just a name that sounded too gentle for a house that hadn't known peace in nearly a year. But when she knelt in front of Liam and Theo, she didn't try to win them over. She didn't ask about their fears or tell them what they needed. Instead, she asked a question. Do you two like stories about dragons? Liam blinked. Theo tilted his head, unsure. But they didn't run. They didn't hide. They just looked at her, curious. Grace smiled. I know lots of stories. About kind dragons. Ones who protect kids while they sleep. Nathan stood in the corner, silent, holding his breath. Something shifted in the room, so small it could have been missed. But it was there. A flicker in Theo's eye. A subtle loosening of Liam's shoulders. Hope. Grace sat on the floor, cross-legged, the boys at a cautious distance. From her bag, she pulled nothing more than her voice. Once upon a time, she began. There were 2 dragon brothers named Luno and Brim. They lived in a village where people were scared of the dark. But Luno and Brim? They weren't scared. They had armor. The twins leaned forward, just slightly. What kind of armor? Theo whispered. Grace leaned in, eyes sparkling. Invisible armor. Made from the things they loved most. Like teddy bears. Or warm hugs. Or a dad's hand. Liam looked up at Nathan. For the first time in months, he smiled. Just for a second. Just enough to make Nathan's knees weak. They laughed that day. A giggle from Theo, a muffled chuckle from Liam. Grace didn't ask about Emily. She didn't talk about grief or healing. She just told stories. Warm, weird, funny stories. And somehow it worked. By the end of the hour, the boys were sitting closer. They still clung to Nathan's arms, but their eyes followed Grace like they were chasing sunlight through a crack in the wall. And for the first time in months, the house exhaled. Grace started the next Monday. She didn't act like a guest. Didn't tiptoe. She moved through the house, like someone born to soften sharp corners. Instead of bringing structure, she brought rhythm. Rituals. Little pockets of magic stitched into the ordinary. At 7 p.m., the sleep ritual began. First, the bath. Sea salt, warm water, a few drops of something that smelled like lavender and mystery. This water washes away fear, she'd say with a wink. Then, story time. Always a new dragon tale. Always starring 2 brothers who weren't afraid, even when the shadows grew cold. But the part that mattered most was the armor. Crystals, chosen by the boys, placed around their beds. One for courage. One for mommy's love. One for daddy's arms. And then they'd close their eyes and whisper, I am safe. I am loved. I am not alone. Nathan watched from the hallway, his breath caught. It didn't fix everything overnight. They still woke sometimes. But now, instead of screams, they called softly, Miss Grace. And she came. Always. One night it was Liam, shaking under the covers. Another, Theo, clutching his bear like a shield. But each time, she returned them to safety with a story, a touch, a whisper. After a week, they slept 5 hours. Then 6. Nathan could hardly believe it. Grace changed the mornings, too. Pancakes became dragon scales. Smoothies were labeled magic potions. Toast came shaped like shields. The boys laughed again. Loudly. Carelessly. Like they had forgotten what fear tasted like. Nathan laughed too. At first, it felt foreign. Like he was stealing joy. But Grace never made him feel guilty. Only human again. She sent him pictures during work. Liam in a superhero cape made from a bath towel. Theo building a cardboard dragon fortress. He found himself smiling during board meetings, checking his phone just to see if another picture had arrived. And then one evening, while washing dishes, Grace said something that changed everything. I think I found part of the problem. She led him upstairs, to the boys' room. Soft golden lights. Wind chimes swaying in the corner. Peaceful now, like a nursery in a fairy tale. She pointed to the wall unit above the door. The AC, she said. It clicks on every night between 2:30 and 3 a.m. Nathan frowned. So, it's soft to us. But to kids who are already half asleep and scared, it might sound like footsteps. Or something coming. He stared at it. 8 months. All the doctors. All the experts. Not one had noticed the damn air conditioner. Grace adjusted the settings. Continuous fan mode. Added a white noise machine. Recommended blackout curtains too. So simple. So obvious. So invisible. Until someone like her looked close enough to see. He asked quietly, "How did you know?" Grace didn't brag. Didn't even smile. Oldest of 6. No one around to help. You learn to listen to the things no one says. And that's when Nathan realized something. She didn't need a license to understand children. She needed experience. And heart. And she had both in spades. But with light comes shadow. One quiet Saturday morning, while Nathan sipped his coffee, Liam climbed into his lap with a serious look. "Dad," he said, "do you like Miss Grace?" Nathan blinked. Choked a little. "Of course," he said, cautious. Theo piped up from the kitchen. "No, like her. Like you like Mommy." The air shifted. Even Grace, slicing apples by the sink, stilled for a heartbeat. Nathan didn't know what to say, or what he was allowed to say. I'll always love Mommy," he said softly. "But Grace is special too. In a different way." Theo studied him, frowning. "You smile when she's around. Just like you used to smile with Mommy." Grace kept her back turned, pretending not to hear. But her hands moved slower. Her shoulders tense. And just like that, the weight returned. That night, after the boys were asleep, Grace knocked on his office door. "We need to talk," she said quietly. They sat across from each other. The room where stories lived now felt heavy with unspoken words. "I'm sorry," she began. "If I crossed a line." "You didn't," Nathan said quickly. "I feel something too. I don't know what to do with it." "I'm scared," he admitted. "If this goes wrong, the boys lose someone else." She nodded. "I'm scared too. I lost my husband. And my daughter." Nathan stared. She had never told him that. "I know what grief does," she continued. "But I also know love isn't betrayal. It's a gift, especially when it comes from something real." He didn't respond right away. Then he reached out, and she didn't pull away. Just a touch. But it was enough to change the shape of everything. For the first time in 8 months, sleep no longer felt like surrender. Liam and Theo still woke occasionally, but not with screams. Now they called softly, "Miss Grace." And Grace came, always wrapped in calm, always ready with a dragon story and a hand on their backs. Nathan would stand by the doorway some nights, watching, not to check on them, just to witness it. The way Grace whispered stories, the way the boys curled into her voice like it was a blanket. It felt holy, in its own quiet, human way. And yet, even in peace, there were shadows. One night, just after 2 a.m., Liam's voice shook Nathan from sleep. "I'm sorry," the boy whispered through tears. The bed was soaked. His face twisted in shame. Nathan didn't scold, didn't sigh, just scooped him up gently, whispered, "You're okay," and carried him into the bathroom. Grace was already moving, clean sheets, dry pajamas, fresh towel. No panic, no judgment, just care. But when Theo woke and saw his brother's tears, he asked a question that pierced Nathan to the core. "Are you going to send Miss Grace away like the others?" Nathan paused mid-fold, the question hanging between them like smoke. He sat down beside the bed, looked both boys in the eye. "No," he said firmly. "Miss Grace isn't like the others. She's here because she loves you. And I love you. She's part of our family now, if that's what you want." Theo nodded slowly. Liam reached for Grace's hand. Will she stay forever? Grace didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. As long as you need me, she said softly. I'll be here. And for the first time, they fell asleep without rituals, without crystals, without invisible armor. Just love. The house, once hollow and haunted, began to fill again. Not with noise, though there was plenty of that, but with life. Grace transformed every day into a quiet adventure. Breakfasts turned into quests. Baths were renamed dragon potions. Even brushing teeth became a challenge issued by invisible forest elves. Nathan, once the silent type, found himself humming in the kitchen, singing sometimes, reading bedtime stories even when Grace wasn't around, slipping into silly voices and loving the way his boys giggled like they used to. He didn't notice the change in himself right away. But one morning, while tying Theo's shoelaces, he heard a sound, his own laughter. He froze. It wasn't forced. It wasn't polite. It was real. One evening, after the boys were in bed and the dishwasher hummed softly, Nathan and Grace found themselves alone in the kitchen. No talk of schedules. No talk of sleep patterns or triggers. Just them. Two people who had stumbled into something fragile, something warm. Grace was drying a cup when she said it. I brought something. Nathan looked up. From her canvas bag, she pulled a thin, hand-bound book. Father Dragon and the Storm Lady. It read in looping, childlike letters. Illustrated, crudely, in colored pencil. Nathan flipped through it. A dragon with sad eyes. Two small dragons clinging to his tail. A mysterious woman made of wind and light who arrives when the storm takes everything. At the final page, the dragons stood together. Not alone. Not afraid. Liam's voice echoed from the hallway. This story, it's about us. Theo leaned over the couch. Does Father Dragon marry the Storm Lady? Grace grinned. Only if the little dragons say yes. They screamed in unison. Yes. Marry her now? Nathan laughed so hard his ribs hurt. Grace just shook her head, face flushed. But later that night, after the lights were off and silence had returned, Nathan reached into the back of his drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. He had been carrying it for weeks. Not with certainty, but with hope. A week later, they went to Crystal Cove. It was Emily's favorite place. The last place they had all been happy. Nathan wasn't sure if it was a good idea. Too many memories. Too much grief stitched into the sand. But the boys needed the sea. And maybe he did too. As the car wound down the coastal highway, the ocean came into view. The boys shouted. Grace smiled beside him, her hand steadying Theo's juice box. It didn't feel like morning. It felt like returning. They built sandcastles, buried each other in the sand. Grace let down her hair and let the wind play with it. And in that moment, Theo turned to her and said, Your hair flies just like Mommy Emily's used to. She froze. Nathan did too. But then Liam added, Now we have two supermoms. Grace smiled, a little sadly, a little gratefully. Nathan didn't cry. He just held her hand. And for once, the memory of Emily didn't ache. It warmed. That night, under string lights in the garden behind the beach house, Nathan opened the box. A simple silver ring. I once thought I'd never open my heart again, he said. But you didn't just save my boys. You saved me. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice stayed steady. I'd love to, she whispered. But there's one thing. She didn't finish the sentence. Not yet. She didn't have to. The next morning, Grace gathered the boys at the beach. She opened the handmade storybook, and on the cover was a new title, The Wedding of Father Dragon and the Storm Lady. The boys squealed before she even began reading. Can we be the ring dragons? Theo shouted. Can we throw leaf confetti? Liam added. Grace laughed. Only if you promise to eat cake after. Back home, under handmade flower crowns and paper lanterns, they were married. No guests. No speeches. No perfection. Just them. A father, a healer, two small boys, and something beautiful rising from the ashes of loss. It wasn't loud, but it was real, and that was enough. They didn't need a grand honeymoon. Just a red and white checkered blanket, a little shade, and the soft hum of laughter. It was a Sunday. Nothing dramatic. No milestones. Just a picnic in the neighborhood park, the kind of simple day that doesn't look like much from the outside. But for Nathan, it was monumental. They sat under the shade of an old oak, Grace laying out apple slices and peanut butter sandwiches while the boys chased butterflies in the golden light. Nathan watched her, silently. She wasn't wearing anything fancy, just jeans and a pale linen blouse. But somehow the sunlight caught her just right. Her curls danced on the breeze. Her skin glowed in the amber afternoon. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this way. At peace. Not waiting for the next scream, the next phone call, the next wave of grief to crash in. Just here. Now. Lemonade. Grace asked, holding out a cup without looking. He hadn't even said he was thirsty. She just knew. He took it, fingers brushing hers. Warm. Familiar. Steady. I used to think I'd never feel peace again, he said quietly. But then you came. Grace didn't say anything. She just smiled. You didn't just save my sons. His voice cracked, the words hitching in his chest. You saved me. Still, she said nothing. But she reached for his hand, and that was more than enough. A gust of wind rolled through. Leaves tumbled across the grass. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A lawnmower buzzed. And Liam came sprinting up, holding a giant yellow leaf like a trophy. Can I keep this? He asked breathlessly. It's a magic protector. Theo was right behind him, nodding solemnly. We're the most protected family ever. Mommy Grace is here, and Mommy Emily's watching from heaven. The words dropped into Nathan's chest like a stone, but not a heavy one. He didn't feel pain. He felt gratitude. Because somehow, they understood. Emily wasn't gone. Not really. She had just stepped into the quiet. And Grace hadn't replaced her. She had joined her. The days became softer. Evenings stretched like golden thread. Morning routines turned into sacred rituals. Grace brought joy without force. She never tried to be Emily. She just was. And the boys? They bloomed. Liam started drawing again. Not just dragons, but houses, families, a sky full of stars. Theo began telling stories. Long, winding, nonsensical tales filled with talking trees and invisible puppies who solved mysteries. Nathan found himself listening like a child. They'd come so far. And yet, the past was still there, gently folded into the corners of their days. One afternoon, Liam asked, Do you think Mommy Emily sees us? Nathan paused before answering. I think she sees everything. Theo whispered, Even the fortress we built? Especially the fortress, Grace said with a wink. It was never about forgetting. It was about remembering without hurting. One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Nathan and Grace sat on the front steps, watching fireflies blink like tiny lanterns across the lawn. He held his coffee mug with both hands, even though it had gone cold. You know, he said, when Emily and I first moved here, I thought we'd live forever. Raise the boys, retire, grow old together in this house. Grace nodded but didn't interrupt. But when she died, he continued, this place felt like a tomb. Too quiet. Too big. I used to walk around at night, hoping I'd hear her voice. Just once. Grace placed her hand gently on his knee. And now? Nathan looked at the window, where the soft glow of the boys' night lights still flickered like a lighthouse in a storm. Now, it feels like home again. Grace wasn't perfect. She forgot appointments. She burned toast. She once put the boys' clothes on backwards without noticing. But none of that mattered, because she loved them fiercely. Not with speeches, not with grand gestures, but with presence. She was there. For every scraped knee, every school art show, every late-night fever and early morning meltdown. And Nathan? He loved her for it. But more than that, he trusted her. With his heart. With their boys. With the fragile, sacred thing they were building together. One night, as they cleaned up dinner, Grace found an old box in the back of a cabinet. Inside were photographs, some faded, some bent, all brimming with life. Emily in a sundress, holding Liam as a baby. Theo asleep on her chest. Nathan laughing, hair still dark, holding both boys like he'd won the lottery. Grace paused at one picture, a beach photo. Crystal Cove. Nathan was there, shirt half unbuttoned, sand on his jeans, grinning like a man who didn't know storms were coming. Emily stood beside him, alive, radiant, unaware. Grace handed it to him. You look like you hadn't slept in days. He laughed softly. We hadn't, but we were happy. Do you miss her every day? He didn't answer right away. Yes, he said finally. But it's not pain anymore. It's gratitude. Grace nodded. That's the difference, isn't it? Between grief and memory. The seasons shifted. Leaves turned to fire. The air sharpened. Halloween arrived with small costumes and sticky candy fingers. Nathan dressed as a tired dragon. Grace was a storm cloud with glitter lightning bolts. The boys, knights, obviously. They ran through the neighborhood with capes flapping, candy bags bulging, and laughter loud enough to wake every ghost in town. Later that night, Theo lay in bed, a candy wrapper stuck to his cheek. "Daddy?" he asked, half asleep. "Yeah, buddy. I like this life." Nathan blinked. "Me too." Liam rolled over. "You can marry Miss Grace again if you want." Nathan smiled in the dark. "I just might. But happiness doesn't erase the past. It only gives it somewhere safe to rest." And every so often, the dark lady returned. Not in full force, not with screams, but in whispers, in trembles, in eyes that searched the corners of the room. One night, Theo woke in tears, clutching his pillow. "She was at the window," he whispered. "Just for a second." Grace didn't argue. She didn't say, "That's not real." She just pulled him close. "She can't hurt you anymore," she whispered. "Your armor is too strong." Liam mumbled in his sleep. "Tell her we're not scared." And Grace, in the hush of the room, whispered to the window, "Did you hear that? They're not scared anymore." Silence answered, but it was a peaceful silence. In the months that followed, small things shifted. Theo stopped asking if sleep meant death. Liam started writing letters to heaven, folding them into paper planes and launching them into the wind. Nathan returned to work full-time, but now his desk had 2 crayon drawings taped to the side, one of a dragon, one of a stick figure family holding hands. Grace began volunteering at the local library, running a weekly Dragon Tales story time. People started calling her Miss Grace even outside their home. The boys called her Mommy Grace without thinking. Nathan called her home. And on one of those quiet days that didn't seem like much, Nathan caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror and realized he didn't look broken anymore. Tired, yes, but whole. They didn't plan a big ceremony. No invitations. No venue. No suits or speeches. Just a quiet backyard wedding under paper lanterns and garlands made of wildflowers Liam and Theo had picked themselves. Grace wore a soft ivory dress, simple, flowing, with a flower crown slightly crooked because Theo had made it himself and insisted she wear it like a dragon queen. Nathan wore a blue shirt, Emily's favorite color. The boys, solemn and grinning, stood between them as the officiant. They had practiced their lines all morning. "We now declare you family," Liam said proudly. "You may hug," Theo added, with a giggle. And so they did. A long, tight, real hug that didn't erase the past but wrapped around it. Like armor. Like love. They weren't replacing anything. They were building something new. After the wedding, they didn't fly anywhere. They went camping in the backyard instead. Tents, fairy lights, marshmallows. Stories told by flashlight. Crickets and laughter, and the smell of smoke in the air. Liam and Theo insisted on one last story before bed. "A true one," Liam said. "Not a dragon one." "Yeah," Theo chimed in. "The real one. About us." So Grace told it. About a house that forgot how to sleep. About 2 boys who were so brave they didn't even know it. About a father who stayed, even when it hurt. And about a woman who brought light, not because she was magical, but because she refused to run. "And now," Grace said, tucking the blanket around them, "now the house sleeps. Because the family is whole." Nathan, sitting just outside the tent, felt tears sting his eyes. Not from sadness. From gratitude. Time passed, as it always does. There were tantrums. Skin knees. Spilled juice. Arguments over screen time and bathwater temperature. But there was also dancing in the living room. Midnight snacks in pajamas. Cards under pillows that said, "You're the best daddy," or "Mommy Grace is a hero." Grace turned out to be just as stubborn as Nathan. She believed in soft rules and emotional honesty, while Nathan believed in structure and checklists. But somehow it worked. They balanced. And the boys? They grew. Slowly, steadily, like flowers after frost. One spring afternoon, a letter arrived. From the school. Nathan opened it at the kitchen counter while Grace folded laundry nearby. It was a note from Liam's teacher. Just one sentence. Today, Liam helped another student who had a nightmare during nap time. He told her, "You're not alone. You've got invisible armor. I do too." Nathan sat down hard, the paper trembling in his hands. Grace walked over, laundry forgotten. She didn't ask what the letter said. She just sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. A few weeks later, they returned to Crystal Cove. Same cottage, same beach, same soft breeze that felt like memory. This time, it wasn't painful. It was sacred. They walked the shoreline, barefoot, Liam collecting shells, Theo trying to out-jump the waves. Nathan took Grace's hand. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked. She laughed. "Not in a million years." He glanced at her. "Are you happy?" She didn't answer right away, just looked out at the sea, then nodded. "I'm home." That night, they lit a fire on the beach and roasted marshmallows. Liam wrote "Fortress Squad" in the sand with a stick. Theo asked if dragons could live at the beach too. "Of course," Grace said. "They live wherever there's love." Years passed in a blink. Grace started a community storytelling circle. Her dragon stories became famous around town. Parents came from other neighborhoods just to sit in the back and watch their kids laugh again. Nathan's business thrived. He designed smaller homes now, more intentional ones. Houses that felt like hugs, not showpieces. Liam and Theo thrived too. They still had nightmares, occasionally, but they didn't scream anymore. They talked about them. They drew them. They fought them, together. Because they weren't scared anymore. They had each other. They had love. They had invisible armor. One ordinary Wednesday, while the boys were at school, Nathan found Grace in the backyard. She was planting something in the garden, a small tree, a fig sapling. He walked up behind her. "What's this?" She smiled without looking up. "Something that'll take years to grow." "Why a fig?" "Because it's strong. Slow, but strong. And it doesn't need to bloom right away to be worth the wait." Nathan crouched beside her, pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "It already feels like it's grown roots," he said. Grace nodded. "Like us." That night, Liam left a note on Grace's pillow. It was written in wobbly handwriting, with hearts and stars drawn all over it. "Dear Mommy Grace, thank you for finding us." She didn't show it to Nathan. She just folded it gently, kissed the paper, and tucked it into her bedside drawer, right next to the dragon crystal. And one day, many years from now, when the boys are grown and moved away, when the house is quieter again, Nathan and Grace will sit on that same back porch, watching the fig tree sway in the breeze. And they'll smile, because they'll know. They didn't just survive grief. They turned it into something whole. They turned a haunted house into a home. They built a fortress that stayed standing. And inside it, they told stories. They grew laughter. They taught two boys that love doesn't leave, it transforms. And that's how the Dark Lady lost. Not with spells, not with swords, but with bedtime rituals, warm milk, dragon tales, and someone who chose to stay.